Welcome to the Transportation Sales Tax Program. I'm Cheryl Harleston. We also have known this program as RoadWise for those of you who have been watching us for some time. Today we're going to take a look back at 2013 and determine what has gone on over these years and over these months, especially since the sales tax became a part of the county's programs, its transportation program. We're going to be talking with a gentleman who has been very much involved in the transportation sales tax program along with county staff as an engineer, and his name is Peter Valaket, and he's been with this project for a number of years now. I think it's like since the inception of the program.
That's right.
2004 is when taxpayers decided that, well, we need to raise money so that we can build and refurbish these roads and the infrastructure. Have you been with the project that long?
Yes, well, the sales tax passed in November of 2004, and collections actually started in May of 2005, and I was brought on the program that summer. I think it was August of 2005 when things really got rolling, and I've been with the program ever since.
Well, now, what sort of things have you been done? What are you involved in as it regards your specialty as an engineer?
Well, my work on the program has been on a lot of the upfront work, the overseeing the design, and all the things that go along with getting a project out to construction, which include all the permitting, making sure the right-of-way acquisition is complete, making sure all the municipal approvals are in place, so that a project is ready to go out to construction.
Now, you're directly involved in the design, or are you working with some other company? Are you working with the county as well, with their engineers? How does that relationship go?
On this program, Charleston County elected to have the design done by a number of firms, and our role was to oversee those firms. And so you may have a consulting engineering company develop a set of plans, and our role is to provide all the quality control, quality assurance reviews, and make sure that the project has been designed to the appropriate standards and that it's all being done in a high quality fashion.
Now, there are a number of times when projects have to be given or reviewed by something called NEPA. What is that exactly?
Well, projects that have federal funding have to follow all the federal regulations, and one of those is NEPA, which stands for the National Environmental Policy Act, and that act, I believe, was passed by Congress in 1979, which brought about a process to make sure that the project you're designing has been done in such a way as to minimize environmental impacts, consider public involvement and what the public wants to see done, to make sure that it's really the least impactful, best alternative to solve whatever traffic goal you have set out at the beginning of your project.
Now, what I've learned about all of this is that there are a number of steps that have to be taken before a project is started. I'm talking about the physical part of it. How long does that take normally on, let's say, large-scale projects like Johnny Dodds Boulevard, building that overpass? How long does it really take to get a project turning dirt, getting it ready to go, and then it's gone?
Well, there's a lot of factors that go into that. One is the size and scope of the project. A big project like Johnny Dodds Boulevard would require that you develop an environmental assessment, which is a full NEPA review of the project. Also, a project like that has a lot of right-of-way acquisition. I think there was over 250 individual parcels that had to be acquired, or portions of those parcels that had to be acquired in order to have enough room to build the project. There's a lot of approvals that you have to get before you can start construction, including the local municipality, which has an opportunity to review and approve the plans, as well as a project like Johnny Dodds is on the state highway system, and so you have SCDOT's review and approval, and also Federal Highway Administration, if you're going to have federal funds on a project, gets involved and reviews the environmental documents under NEPA. So all those steps had to be done for any large federally funded project. Johnny Dodds Boulevard specifically didn't have any federal money in it, but we wanted for it to be federally eligible. But other projects in the program, like Bees Ferry Road and Harborview Road, which has not yet started construction, those projects do have federal funding in them, and so they do follow the similar processes.
Now, Glenn McConnell is one of those projects as well over here in North Charleston. And how long did it take to complete a project like that? I'm trying to understand what time is involved in medium-sized projects, small projects, so the public can be aware that you can't just turn the dirt and get the project underway. It takes some preparation.
Yeah, for a project like Glen McConnell Parkway, I think that took about 2 years from the time that the funding was approved to the time that construction started. And it was all about going through those processes that I went through just a minute ago and making sure that everything is ready before you start construction.
Now, as far as Glen McConnell is concerned, that's finished.
That is done.
And there are a number of projects that have been completed during the year 2013.
Yeah, Glen McConnell Parkway was done quite a few years ago. I think that was
and Palmetto Commerce Parkway?
Yep.
That was a while back as well.
That's correct.
And these projects were underway and were completed in a very timely fashion, and that's important to people like you.
Yeah, well, it's critically important from the standpoint of the project cost. You know, we try to get ahead of inflation, and one of the reasons that the Charleston County Sales Tax Program was a bond-funded program is so that these major projects can be completed early on in advance of when they would have been able to be completed if you didn't sell bonds. So what that bonding does is it gets all your funding up front, and so that allows you to get ahead of the construction inflation, which runs in advance of.
I was going to say, that's an inflation beater. I mean, that's one way to get around a terrible amount of inflation in a project. It's just get it done, put those things in place, and the project begins, and then it's completed. It sounds like, from what you're telling us, it may be several years before a project can get underway, especially a large-scale project.
Yeah, it can be a number of years, and there's just a lot of steps that a lot of folks don't see that go into development of a project.
You and I have been in public meetings a number of times, and these meetings have been held so that the public can comment on a project that's going to be started. What do you think the public has said to us over the last year or so? Are they pleased, or do you feel that we've been able to do things in a way that the public has expected? I mean, where do we stand on that?
We've gotten a lot of positive feedback for a number of our projects, especially the projects that do a lot to alleviate traffic congestion, like the improvements to Johnny Dodds Boulevard or Palmetto Commerce Parkway or Glen McConnell Parkway that provide a tremendous amount of traffic congestion relief, as well as like Palmetto Commerce, which provides a lot of economic development opportunity. So there's been a lot of positive feedback for projects that have been completed to date.
How does the county or any other entity, government or otherwise, how do you stay on top of something that's constantly changing? The traffic in some areas of the community when this program started in 2004 was at one level. And now it's overwhelming. I live in Mount Pleasant, and there's so much traffic, not only in Mount Pleasant, but throughout the county, throughout the country. Can the county and the Department of Transportation and whoever is involved keep up with all of that?
Well, it's a constantly growing and changing thing, like you mentioned. There are local planning organizations whose job is to try to look out in advance and see what the traffic numbers might be 10, 20 years from now.
Yeah.
In Charleston, it's the Berkeley, Charleston, Dorchester Council of Governments, where they do the regional planning and try to anticipate those growth areas.
So is that like a projection that's made by someone who has the authority to do that and can do it?
That's right.
So projections are made as to traffic, and traffic studies are made as well.
That's correct, yeah.
And then you kind of know what to do. Are you preparing then these projects to be able to meet the needs of the future, or is it the present time? Or how does one build knowing that change is going to come?
Well, you base your design off of the traffic projections, so you're not just trying to address what's out there today, but you're looking 20 years into the future, which is typically called the design horizon, and you're trying to design your project so that traffic in that design year is accommodated by the improvements you're making today. You can't always do that because of funding limitations or various right-of-way restrictions. So oftentimes your goal is to design for 20 years out. Oftentimes you're trying to catch up for growth that's happened in prior years. So it's a constantly evolving situation where you have to be looking ahead and planning financially as well as in terms of design for what might be needed in the future.
When we come back from the break, I'd like to talk with you about maintenance, and maybe you don't have anything to do with that, and you can just say that, I guess. But where are we going from here? And take a look at some of the projects that have been completed before they were improved, and then after. We'll do that in just a moment. We'll be right back.
Hey, Charleston County, let's recycle. Charleston County makes it easy. Recycling glass, aluminum cans, steel and aerosol cans, plastics 1 to 7. We recycle them all. And don't forget paper. If it tears, recycle it. Even cardboard. Recycle at work, at home, and at play. So whether you're using the 2 curbside bin system and separating, or the all-in-one roll cart system, keep recycling. Brought to you by Charleston County Environmental Management.
Welcome back to the Transportation Sales Tax Program, also known as RoadWise. We're talking about a tax that was accepted by the public in 2004. Voters overwhelmingly were in favor of this project because we recognized in this county, just as many counties and cities around the country are recognizing, that in fact this additional money will help us as we try to improve our infrastructure. And I'm talking with a young man now whose name is Peter Valaket, and he is a pre-construction manager, and he's been a part of the RoadWise program, or the Transportation Sales Tax Program, almost from its inception. And we're using you to take us back to 2013 and let us know what has gone on and how the taxpayers' dollars have been used, and the successes and the challenges that you've had, and where do we go from here in 2014. In our last segment, we were talking about some of the projects that had been bonded, and that was a way to make sure that dollars were there. It helps us beat inflation and all of those other things. But I'm looking at the other side of the coin now and wondering, is there some way that all of this work can be maintained over the years so that the county and other people who do this, other communities that do this, don't worry about going back and starting all over again, because the climate and the picture and the way that the public is reacting to these kind of things says, well, we don't want to do any more taxes, so you better do it right the first time. I mean, how do we maintain? How do we keep this thing going?
Well, with the Charleston County Sales Tax Program, what you've seen is a lot of the projects that Charleston County has done are actually improvements to the state roadway system. So Charleston County entered into an agreement with SCDOT back in 2007, which outlined each party's responsibilities relative to these projects. And I guess in a normal situation, if SCDOT was funded at the level that they probably should be funded, a lot of these improvements that Charleston County is making would have been state-funded improvements. But unfortunately, the funding is just not there. So Charleston County voters passed the sales tax, which authorized, the collection of tax for construction of these improvements. And like I mentioned, a lot of them are on the state system. And so the agreement basically outlined that Charleston County could make these improvements on the state system, but when they were completed, that maintenance responsibilities get turned over to the state because they're still state roadways. And so the state performs their regular maintenance once the projects are completed and turned over to the DOT at the end. And of course, part of that means that they have to be built and designed to all the state standards so that the state can accept them when they're done. And that's one of the things that we've been involved with, is making sure that all those standards are met so that when the projects are completed, they can be turned back over to the state.
Now, the state's working with you in some way as you go through this whole process.
Yep, they have from the beginning. They've been a partner in helping us to develop the projects and perform all the reviews and whatnot.
Well, what sort of money does the state, well, I'm not going to go too far with that, but I'm wondering, does the state have the ability to financially take care of these kinds of issues, infrastructure problems, roads, highways, etc.? There is something called the gasoline tax, and I don't know how all that works, but maybe you can explain it to us. Is that how the county, rather the state, would really get their money or normally get their money?
That's the primary source of state highway funds is through the gas tax. I think it's 17 cents a gallon in South Carolina, which is, I think, one of the lowest gas tax rates in the United States, and I'm sure somebody from the DOT can give you more information on that. But their gas tax hasn't been raised in decades, and South Carolina, while it is not one of the largest states, has one of the largest state-owned highway systems in the country, just by the function of how many roads that you might think of as local roads are actually maintained by the state. So, you know, the state SCDOT, they're, as a result of them being underfunded for so many years, is why you've seen a lot of these local option sales tax programs come about in many parts of the state.
You know, one just has to wonder if the state will ever be able to take responsibility for this, for these kinds of issues. Infrastructure is what I'm talking about. If they don't, what happens from there? Is it that we constantly, and this is political, so I don't want to go too far, but does the public have to take this kind of burden constantly?
Well, I think what you're seeing is local governments adapting to the financial situation. And so with Charleston County, that came in the form of a local option sales tax because the growth is happening. The highway improvements need to be made. It's just a matter of how they can be funded and who's going to be building them. Let's
go back to those projects that you and I have been involved in for all these years, and help us understand what's going on with the bonded projects and what they are, and what does that mean? You've said inflation, and we know that that's important, that we beat inflation in any way that we can. So there's another way of paying for these projects. But there are also the large-scale projects, it seems, unless I don't think it's any different. But also the allocations projects and the street intersection projects and all of those kinds of things that have been occurring during 2013 and before. What's happening in that area?
Well, in terms of 2013, what happened with the bond-funded projects is, of course, at the beginning of the year, Johnny Dodds Boulevard, which was the main, well, not the main, but the largest single sales tax funded project was completed. I think substantial completion was achieved in March of 2013. So that was a major milestone for the program, having gotten that largest sales tax funded project out of the way. Also in 2013, you saw continued construction on the Bees Ferry Road widening project in West Ashley. That project started construction, I believe, a year and a half ago or so, and is starting to get to the point where I think there's about another 4 to 6 months left on it before it'll be complete. So we're looking at completion of Bees Ferry early this summer.
And there have been a lot of intersection improvements as well.
Yeah.
Repaving and paving roads. And
yeah, Charleston County, beyond the bond-funded projects, has an annual allocation program which funds annually intersection improvements, local paving projects, which is typically dirt road paving. Also, they do a lot of bicycle and pedestrian projects, you know, sidewalks and bike lanes and bike paths, that kind of thing, as well as a lot of drainage projects. And so at any given point, there's dozens of projects ongoing at any stage of design or construction throughout the county. And a lot of projects were completed in this past year, really throughout Charleston County, smaller scale projects like that, at the same time as you see these large projects under construction.
You know, as I look back, a lot of work has been done. There are hundreds, literally, of projects that have been implemented through this program. And the beat goes on. It's continuing right now. And let's find out what 2014 holds for us. If you'd give us a glimpse of that.
Sure.
We'll do that in just a moment. We'll be right back.
Hey, Charleston County, let's recycle. Charleston County makes it easy. Recycling glass, aluminum cans, steel and aerosol cans, plastics 1 to 7. We recycle them all. And don't forget paper. If it tears, recycle it. Even cardboard. Recycle at work, at home, and at play. So whether you're using the 2 curbside bin system and separating, or the all-in-one roll cart system, keep recycling. Brought to you by Charleston County Environmental Management.
Welcome back to the Transportation